things that glow that used to be in TV sets and stuff. And when I first learned to design a radio, that was the media I used. Then later on, when I got to be in my early 20s, Bell Labs invented this thing called the transistor. And so I had to go back to school and learn how to design radios using transistors. Then in the 70s, someone invented this thing called large-scale integrated circuits. And these ICs, integrated circuits, these large-scale integrated circuits came out.
Basically a chip.
Yeah. And it was half a radio on a chip, and you could buy 2 chips and put them together and you'd have a whole radio. So then I learned to design radios using integrated circuits. Then later on, integrated circuits went into the digital age. We got out of the analog age and went into the digital age, and they developed digital circuitry. And then I had to learn how to design. They use these things called MOSFETs and these things called, can't remember the name right off the top of my head, phase lock loop. The phase lock loop got invented, and the phase lock loop was interesting because you could send data to it in binary, and it would tune to a channel, or tune to a frequency. So now I could send it digital information to control this little chip, and out would come a radio. So I learned how to make a radio using digital chips. Okay, so I could build a radio with tubes, I could design a radio with integrated circuits, I could design a radio with transistors, and I could design a radio with digital technology. By the way, when I was a kid in high school and first learning, actually in grammar school, the first radio I built was a crystal radio, which was made out of a razor blade, a pencil, razor blade and a pencil became my crystal, and I took a cardboard tube from the bathroom. You know, these tubes that paper comes on. You know, your toilet paper or your kitchen paper. Take those two, wrap the coil around that, hooked up an antenna in the ground, and I could hear radio. So there's a fifth. You've got 5 totally different kinds of technology. 5 different hows for making a radio. So when I started studying or teaching electronics, somebody said, well, Natch, if there's 5 different technologies for building a radio, then what is a radio? You know, how would you define a radio? And that's like trying to define a chair. You know, if you go to the store, how many different chairs have you seen? How many different styles of chairs have you seen? Thousands of thousands. But a chair is basically something you put your butt in and you sit on, like we're doing right now, right? And so, in a Plutonian way, from Plato's point of view, there's an ideal or a perfect chair. And then what we do is we design things based on that ideal, and we have all kinds of different ways in which we can design chairs. So it got to the point where I would say in my classes now, it's not about studying tubes or transistors, it's finding out what a radio wave is and how a radio wave works. Because if I know what a radio wave is, and I know how to decode a radio wave, then I can use any how I want to. I could use any technology I want to. And then I started developing a thing in the late 80s known as hybriding. And in hybriding, what I would do is I would build an audio amplifier where the high end of the audio amplifier was designed with tubes. The middle end of the audio amplifier was designed with digital integrated circuits, and the bass was designed with transistors, because transistors produced the best bass and had the worst high end, or tubes had the best high end and the worst bass. And so actually I used 3 different generations of technology to produce an amplifier. And that amp is the best sounding thing you've ever heard. So what I did is I split the audio spectrum into 3 different parts and used 3 different technologies that were the best at that thing, and developed a super hi-fi, super high fidelity that sounded great. But I'm using 3 different technologies. And so if I wanted to design a radio today, I would go into my kitchen and look around my shop and find any parts of anything that's laying around from any generation, and I would design and put together a radio using all 5 of those technologies. So you see, how isn't important anymore, is it? Since I have 5 different ways in which I could do it on their own, I could integrate those. I could hybrid them together and mix them up any way I want to produce whatever I want. But what I need to know is, what is a radio wave, and what is the nature of a radio wave, and what is a radio in its most abstract form? See where I'm getting at? So the artist's real question is, what do I want to do? Why do I want to do it? And then steal anyhow, any process you can, use any technology you can to produce the art that you want to produce. So the how really is incidental. It's not that important. And yet when we teach things like music, that's all we talk about is how to do this and how to do that. And here are the rules here and here are the rules there. And we never get to find out what the bones of the thing are made of. What's behind it, you know? What are the bones behind this beast that's really creating all this? Now as a guitar player, you probably know this. How many guitar players have you run into that can't read music? Most. Most of them. By the way, about 6 months ago, I received some catalogs from Mel Bay, one of the largest publishing houses in America. I received a catalog that was this thick, that had everything, all the publications, all the DVDs, and all the CDs they had for every musical instrument in the orchestra. We're talking about maybe 25 musical instruments. And the catalog was this thick. Then they sent me a guitar catalog. The guitar catalog was this thick. And all it was the guitar. And it had DVDs and CDs and, you know, and lesson plans and music that you could buy for the guitar. Now I found it kind of interesting that this much for the guitar and that much for every other musical instrument there was. Yet in order to learn these instruments, you need to learn a lot of theory and a lot of music theory in order to learn to play these instruments. And the guitar, the catalog was this thick, and no one can read music on the guitar. So that told me something. That told me that the guitar is now the most popular musical instrument on the planet Earth. It is being sold everywhere. It's a quick musical fix in which people can pick up like a piece of software that'll start generating music. And they can learn to play this thing mechanically to get some satisfaction. But it's also creating a huge mass of ignorance about music theory. So my favorite joke is, how do you stop a guitar player from playing? Put music in front of them. Okay? My second favorite joke, and here's an indictment of the classical method. How do you stop a classical pianist from playing? Take the music away. Exactly! Now, if people that are studying classical music can't improvise like a good guitar player, there's something they haven't learned. And if on the other hand, you get people that are learning to play musical instruments mechanically, and the mechanics, for instance, tab on the guitar, cannot be easily converted into script, into the script. And most guitar players could not look at a sheet of music and play it. So again, that tells you right there what's wrong with music theory in general. People are either learning to play by harmonic. I just went out and bought a bunch of books on harmonica. Every single book on how to play the harmonica is based on what's called harmonica tablature, in which they give you the whole number and tell you to either blow on it or draw on it, and it has no relationship to the printed music or sheet music. So again, a lot of harmonica players are learning to play the blues, what we call cross harp, and don't know they're playing cross harp. A lot of them play straight harp and don't know what straight harp is, and almost none of them play flat harp, and they could if they knew what it was. So even there, on that instrument, the harmonica, its full resources as a musical instrument are not being realized because people don't have any music theory that they can tie it to, and most people learn to play the harmonica by ear or by rote and can't read music. And as I was showing you in our last class, it's pretty darn easy to learn to play the harmonica if you just take the numbers 2, 4, 6, and 7 and put a circle around them and inhale. And then everywhere you have the numbers 1, 3, 5, you just simply leave it alone and blow. And that's all you need. You just need to know when to inhale and when to exhale, and that's it. And so it's pretty easy to convert scripted music into a set of instructions on how to play the harmonica. But it's not taught. The tablature is taught. So the problem with learning something mechanical is you get a lot of instant gratification, but it's not going to take you anywhere in the future. You're not going to learn anything about music. All right, tonight what we're going to do is I am going to give a summary of, pick up where we left off and take it as far as I can take it. And cross your heart, hope to die. If you ask me a lot of questions, I may ignore some of them. It's not an attempt to be rude, but since it's being filmed, and all this will be posted on the internet in a week, anything that I'm saying in this class today, in this intense music theory class, can go be looked up. Okay? That's why I always recommend someone you always should bring a cassette tape recorder with you when you go to class, and at least record if you're going to hear an intense lecture, because then you can go back over and listen to it. And notes, I found that when people are actually taking notes, they're not listening. They're so busy trying to figure out how to spell that they're not hearing while they're writing. Now there are some people who do shorthand that can do that, God bless, but most of us can't.